One of the most frustrating feelings I think any human being can have, particularly if you're me, is when you look at somebody and you see somebody and you can't recognize who they are. Ugh, it's the worst, right? We just experienced this last night. Stephanie and I turned on a TV show and we watched this actress and we were like, what does she play in, right? Have you experienced this? Like for me, it is like one of the most frustrating things in the world. Like you should know them, whether they played in a movie or a TV show, or maybe you bump into them at Walmart or the other side of the gas pump, and you're like, I should know you. Hey, man, sup? You say something very vague and you just can't, and then it's 3 days later, you're up at night, and then randomly the next day you figure it out. It is like one of those aha moments. But for me, just, I guess because I have the microphone, like it is the most frustrating thing in the world. But when you do have that aha moment, when you do have that, oh yeah, that's how I know them, or that's what TV show they played, oh, that's how that it's all coming together. It is, again, maybe one of the greatest feelings in the world as well. Last summer, Stephanie and I were coming back from vacation, and we were in the Fort Lauderdale airport. We was coming back to Nashville, and we'd already made our way through the security and all the things, and we were trying to find our gate. And so this massive long hallway, we're walking down it, and we was going to go try to find where we needed to be gate-wise and stuff like that. I don't travel much, so that makes me a little nervous. And so as we were going down this massively long hallway, I noticed a dude. I was on the right side of this walkway, this hallway, and I noticed a dude who was standing kind of on this side at a gate, and I don't know why in the world I looked over his direction, I saw him, but I knew this guy. And somehow, some way, I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And again, if you're like me and that bugs you, like the whole time, you're trying to find the gate so you don't, miss the flight and all the things. But the whole time I'm thinking, I knew who that guy was. Anyway, walked down, found our gate, and it was an early morning flight. And if you're like me, you have to have coffee. So once we found the gate, we turned around, we thought, we'll go back and find the coffee shop. And so this time, when we were returning in the hallway, I was a little bit closer. All right, I was going to try to get as close to this guy as I could because he had a blue polo on. It was striped, and on the upper side up here, it had the words KC on it. And I had zero idea what that meant, but I just knew, like, if you've experienced this, you just knew that you knew the person. And eventually, for some random reason, it didn't take long after passing the guy, it was this guy. Now, I am not a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I'm not really an NFL person. Like, I don't really have a team. But I knew that this was the defensive coordinator of the Chiefs. I knew it. And it was so frustrating until I figured it out. That's the guy's name. I don't even know the guy's name. I just see him on TV when the Chiefs were, once upon a time when they were good. Like, it was just who that guy was. Right? And again, if you've experienced this, that moment when you recognize, when you put it together, 2 + 2 does equal 4. When you figure it out, it is so relieving. It just works like, that they played on that one show. They played in that one movie. That was a next door neighbor to my aunt. Like all these like little connections. When you finally put it together, it just makes life better, doesn't it? Or, ironically enough, this happens to some of Jesus' own followers. And believe it or not, it was Jesus himself that they didn't recognize. Luke 24 records the story. We're going to look at we're going to look at a little portion of this story, but if you want to go to Luke chapter 24, it is, in my opinion, one of the greatest chapters in Luke. He records all things Resurrection Sunday. He starts out by telling everybody, hey, I carefully investigated some women who were following Jesus on the third morning after his death. They went to the tomb. And if you know the story, the tomb is empty, right? The stone has been rolled away, and these women are going to the tomb, and they get there. They see the stone has been rolled away. They see quite literally no body in the tomb, and they're trying to figure out what is going on. And Luke records that these angels show up, and they say, why are you looking for the one who is alive in the place of the dead? Like, what are you doing? Why are you here? Don't you remember what he said? Don't you remember that the Son of God, the Son of Man, the Messiah, had to suffer and be handed over to die, and God would raise him from the dead? And somewhere along the way, they begin to put it together. And they run back to the 11 disciples. There once was 12, minus one who betrayed Jesus. Now there's 11. They go back to the original 11 and they say, the tomb is empty. There was a stone. There's angels. We didn't figure what's going on. And so everybody's in this uproar of what is going on? The tomb is supposed to be closed. Jesus' body is supposed to be inside. And then Luke carefully investigated this stuff. He wasn't there that day, but he interviewed and he went around trying to figure out putting this story together. And what's really cool about this chapter, if you've never read it, I highly encourage you to read it. But in verse 13, he pivots away from what's going on. He pivots away from wherever the disciples and the women went to, and he goes to a road outside of Jerusalem. He begins to tell the story of how two of Jesus' followers, not two of the original 11, because Jesus had a lot more followers than just 12. He begins to tell the story of how two followers of Jesus begin to leave Jerusalem. They're headed to a little village 7 miles outside of Jerusalem by the name of Emmaus. And on the way, Luke records that these two followers of Jesus are talking about, debating, discussing all the things that have happened. If you know the storyline, it was just 7 days ago that Jesus came into Jerusalem and everybody's celebrating. By Friday, everybody is no longer saying Hosanna. By Friday, they're yelling, crucify him. The world has been turned upside down, and now they're still discussing what happened just that morning. Because the women who have come back to the disciples, word has begun to spread that there is quite literally no body in the tomb. And so as these guys are walking to Emmaus, and they're thinking and they're discussing and they're talking and they're doing all these things, all of a sudden another dude walks up beside them and joins them in their journey. And this guy says, "What are y'all talking about?" Luke records that it's the resurrected Jesus himself, and they don't recognize him. Can we all agree that would be frustrating? Right? That is so frustrating. But Luke actually tells us that God made it available. God allowed them not to see Jesus, which is so interesting. But they don't realize it's Jesus. And so when Jesus walks up and he says, "What are y'all talking about?" they are sad and disappointed at this question. So much so that they look at Jesus, unbeknownst to really recognizing and realizing who he is, and they say, are you not aware of the things that have been going on here? Have you been sleeping under a rock? Have you turned your notifications off? Are you not aware of the things that have been happening in Jerusalem just the last few days? And I love Jesus. You got to love Jesus, because this is what he says. He goes, "What things?" And then what's really cool about the story is they began to explain Jesus to Jesus. Wild. And so they begin through the whole story, right? We're following this guy. We think he's a prophet. He's the Messiah. He's doing amazing things. They come in here. We're celebrating him just 7 days ago, just last Sunday. We're celebrating. Everything's going great. But then all of a sudden, our leaders arrested him. He was betrayed and he was crucified. And everybody in the conversation of the first century knew that if you were crucified, you were dead. There was no other option. And we thought, they say, we thought he was the prophet, the one that would deliver Israel and set up all the things that are these Old Testament prophets. We thought, and they used this past tense. Check out the story. They use all this past tense language to the face of Jesus. And Jesus basically has to get on to him a little bit. He has to scold him. And here's what's really cool, and here's really the only reason why I think that Luke notes this, that God didn't allow them to recognize him. Because let's be honest, if they really knew it was Jesus, they would have never explained Jesus to Jesus. They would have knelt down in worship. They would have been in such shock and awe. They wouldn't have said all of those things. You ever seen the TV show Undercover Boss? It was a British TV show that ended up being in the American marketplace, but it was about how these top-level executives made it into the lower-tier jobs of their own company to see what these employers or employees thought of working for the company and what they thought about the executives running the company. Jesus was the first undercover boss. He sneaks in beside him, and God doesn't allow them to recognize Jesus, and they're like, "What's going on?" And so they begin to explain everything. They're open and honest and vulnerable to the face of Jesus, which I want to argue they might not have said those things if they really did recognize Jesus. Right? If the boss sneaks in and you don't recognize him and you're like, "This place is terrible," You might not say that if he's the one signing your checks. And so through this story, Jesus gets on to him. He's like, hey, have y'all not been paying attention? Did you not hear the things that I said? And Luke records that Jesus begins to explain to them everything from the writing of Moses. In other words, from the first 5 books of our Bibles. He begins to explain from the writings of Moses all the way through the prophets, all the things that were said about himself. You talk about an incredible Bible study, and you get your steps in. In this moment, this is where we pick up the story in Luke chapter 24, starting in verse 28. By this time, they were nearing Emmaus and the end of their journey. Jesus acted as if he were going on, but they begged him, stay the night with us, since it is getting late. And so he went home with them. This is a really cool little detail that if you read Luke's gospel carefully, you'll notice he adds some of these little details in here. Can I just tell all of us here, this isn't even really part of this hospitality series, but since it's in the text, I figured I should explain it. Like, for many of us, we are the exact same way. Right? That we've done the inviting when it comes to salvation and grace and mercy and forgiveness, and that's really great. Right? And that's wonderful, and we celebrate that, and you get baptized and do all the things. But some of us have stopped inviting Jesus at that point. Notice in the text here that Jesus is not forcing himself into their homes. Jesus is not forcing himself at their table. He's not even forcing himself for a meal. He's going to keep on going while they've taken the off-ramp. And when they realize what's going on, they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Come with us. As we've talked about for the last 4 weeks, let me invite you over. Come to my house, sit at my table, eat my food. This is a great conversation. This is amazing. You're explaining all these things. We're starting to put things together. This is incredible. Why don't you come with us? And for some of us, again, this really doesn't have anything to do with hospitality. It may have something to do with your next steps. But some of us, this is exactly what we've done. We've invited Jesus to save us, but there's where we've stopped. We've invited Jesus to give us his grace, his mercy. Oh, and can we be in heaven with you? That'd be great too. But that's where we've stopped. And then we struggle with all the things that life throws at us, and we wonder why we don't feel close to God. It's because you haven't invited him in. And what we do is we wait for a miraculous miracle moment, or we wait for our prayers to be answered, or we wait for some kind of sign, and nothing happens. And then all of a sudden doubt creeps in. Anxieties creep in, and you begin to wrestle with your faith or deconstruct from your faith, and you wonder why you're at where you're at, or you don't feel close to God, or whatever vocabulary or vernacular you want to use right there, where clearly we see Jesus leaves Jerusalem. He leaves the empty tomb to go find some followers of his who are exiting the mission. Because from their mindset, the Messiah is dead, so therefore the movement is dead. I'm getting out of here. And they begin to leave the movement. And they either go back home or they go to a friend's house. We don't know why they're going to Emmaus, but they're headed there. And Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, one of the first things he does, that very first Easter moment, is meet them on this road. And it begin to explain everything to them. I wonder if for some of us, we should begin to invite Jesus into our situations and our crises. That it's great that you've been saved, but you're struggling in your marriage. Have you invited Jesus into that? Have you invited Jesus into the problem of being single or divorced or being widowed? Have you invited Jesus into your mental health and your stress and your anxieties? Or is he just your God on Sundays? He's not forcing himself in. From this text, from this story, we see Jesus desperately wants to be invited. And we've seen over the last 4 weeks through the Gospel of Luke, when he gets invited, he shows up. And what greater experience, what greater joy can you and I have as people of faith when God shows up? For some of us today, this could be your very next step. Is stop waiting around on Jesus, stop waiting around on the next series, the next sermon, the next speaker, and just say, God, I need your help. Help me with my finances. Help me with my grades. Help me with my career path. Jesus desperately wants to be invited in your life, and we see it right here. He's going to keep going, but the followers are like, whoop, time out, flag on the play, you come with me. Let me invite you over. Stay at my house, be with me, eat at my table, eat this food. Luke continues. He says, as they sat down to eat, he took the bread and blessed it, he, Jesus. Then he broke it and gave it to them. Suddenly, their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and at that moment, he disappeared. Now, this is the greatest / worst bait and switch ever. Come over, be at the table. Jesus says yes. He takes the food, blesses it, breaks it, poof, he's gone. That's frustrating. But I wonder if in that moment, imagine you're that follower. Imagine you're suffering from the depression that your Messiah is dead. Imagine that you've experienced the loss and the trauma and the experience that is crucifixion, and that your Messiah went through that. And through that grief and through that loss and through that depression and all the things that you're feeling, all of a sudden, he's not only at your table, he's been walking alongside of you the whole time. As you were thinking about leaving, as you were thinking about getting out of town, he's been with you the entire time. You might not have recognized him. You might not have put 2 and 2 together, but he's been with you the entire time. And when you recognize it, whether it's the defensive coordinator of the Chiefs or somebody else, when you put it together, when you recognize who it is, there is such a feeling inside of you of, aha, I get it. And at that moment, when they recognized him, he disappeared. I want you to remember when they recognized him, because Luke's going to confirm it in a few verses. Finishing out this story, they said to each other, don't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the scriptures to us? And within the hour, they were on their way back to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 disciples and the others who had gathered with them, who said, the Lord has really risen. He appeared to Peter. Then the 2 from Emmaus told their story of 2 things. Number 1, how Jesus had appeared to them along the road. And 2, how they recognized him as he was breaking the bread. I almost entitled this series, The Breaking of Bread, because there's something about people gathering together. From the first century when Jesus implemented it to the 21st century here today in 2026, there's something about people gathering together. There's something about a shared experience around food. As the Apostle Paul tells us, Christians, Jesus followers, from the first to the 21st century, we are to practice hospitality. And my encouragement for the last 4 weeks is that you need to understand that it is so much more than a meal. What I love about this story, other than the fact Jesus rises from the dead, what I love about this story is that Jesus used hospitality. He used it as a launching pad to change the world. Because when he sits down at their table, not the 11, not the students, not the disciples, just 2 ordinary, everyday, I'm going to follow Jesus because I think he's the Messiah. When he sits down with them, when he engages in their hospitality, when they invite him over, it's them. It's those 2 who go back to the original 11. It's those that would go back to Jerusalem and say, it's true. It's not just craziness. It's not just a rumor. Women in first century, you had no say. So for women to return from an empty tomb and say the tomb is empty, nobody believed you, even if it were true. And these followers go back to Jerusalem and say, it's true. I don't care what you believe or don't believe in what the women said. It's true. We've seen him. He's been with us. We ate with him. Then he disappeared. But he is alive. He is risen. And for us here today in 2026, when I think about hospitality and all that it can do in our culture and our society, our communities and our school places and the workspace, all of the things that we've talked about for the last few weeks, that if Jesus uses hospitality as a launching pad to change the world, why aren't we? because you're comparing your house to someone else's? Because you don't pick up and the house isn't clean, or you've got animals. Like, are you serious right now? Jesus used everyday, ordinary followers and their hospitality to launch the gospel. It can be argued that you are here today because of that tableside conversation. Don't tell me hospitality can't be used. Don't tell me you have to stand on a stage with a microphone to change the world. That, as I said last week in a very blunt way, is not true. Every single one of us with houses and apartments or cafeteria room tables or cell phones that have group chat, every single one of us can invite someone into something, because every single body wants to be seen. Every single body wants to be known. Every single body wants to be valued. And odds are, if you've ever been invited to something, if you've ever been invited over, if you've ever been invited into something, if we were honest with ourselves, it feels really good, doesn't it? So why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we use hospitality? If Jesus used it, don't you think we should? I do. But the challenge is yours. Because I, like Jesus, I'm not forcing myself into your home. I don't want to get arrested, okay? So this is one of those things that you have to step up and do, right? I'm not forcing myself into your home. You can't, no one else wants to do that, right? We want to be invited over. And for so long, Christians have reduced or minimized what they've done to just a Sunday morning. And I'm going to come and I'm going to sing and I'm going to listen and I'm going to go home and I'm going to try to apply it, or I'm going to figure out a way to serve more or give more or do all these different things that we talk about in the church, which to an extent are fine and good. But in a world that is so full of content, from YouTube and podcasts and books, and radio stations, and TED Talks and sermons and all the things in between. We've got so much content. Can I say something without you firing me, because it's kind of part of my job? The world doesn't need more sermons. It needs more servants. It needs people of faith, people of God to say, you know what? I might not be able to change the world, but I can change somebody's world. The next door neighbor who lost her husband, she needs to be seen, known, and valued. The new family that moved in across the street who know nobody. They moved here for a job. They moved here because they got to take care of an elderly parent. They need to be seen, known, and valued. They don't need to hear my sermons. Come on, this is part of it. This is where the people of God for the last 2,000 years have been able to take the gospel across the planet, so that this morning or this day on Sunday, billions, with a B, billions of people will worship Jesus as Lord and Christ. Why? Because for 2,000 of years, we haven't reduced ourselves to 60 minutes in a big metal building in a field on a Sunday morning. Christians have been hospitable. Christians have said, come over, be a part of this. Eat at my table. Enjoy my patio. Check out and play, let your kids play in my pool. All the things that we have, do you really think God blessed you with all those things for you? What if we stepped out of self for just a second and said, what if God blessed me, gave me this? The houses and the toys and the apartments and all the things that we have, not only for the joy that they bring to our lives, but the potential for the joy of others. The potential of saying, hey, would you come over? Saturday night, would you and your family come over and be a part of this? What would God do if you simply stepped up to the plate and said, I want to invite somebody over? I want to gather together. At Crosswind Church, our strategy and our culture, if you've been here for, I don't know, I like to think every Sunday, but sometimes I forget to mention them. But for the most part, If you hear a majority of Sundays, you're going to hear us use the word home groups because that's our culture, that's our strategy. That's where we implement authentic Christian community. And let me tell you something. I can say this because I've worked here for the last 6.5 years, we're not real good at it. We're trying to be better every single week, how we get people into groups, how we publish and promote community. Now, home group leaders are great, and we've got 10 amazing groups. But guess what? In a church of 300 to 400 people, that's not enough. And so, while I've been very clear about my one goal for this series, right? I've pretty much said it every week. I have one goal for the series, that you, as a part of Crosswind Church, you would invite someone over. But in that goal, I have had a hidden agenda. And the agenda has been that I hope you would fall in love with hospitality. That it wouldn't just be a one and done thing. It would be something that you might entertain a little more. That you made some friends. You enjoyed each other's company. The food on the new smoker was fantastic. And you wanted to do it again. And you wanted to do it again, allowing your own schedule and calendar of events, that you would want to continue to do it so much that eventually, all of a sudden, we're beginning to talk about some things that are going on in our lives, the struggles and the things that are going on, just like the disciples did to Jesus. Even though they didn't realize it was Jesus, they were struggling, weren't they? That in groups, you could be honest with one another. You could be vulnerable and open. You could ask for prayer. You wouldn't have to call up or text the church or the pastor, but you could ask for prayer amongst the community that you've already established. The hidden agenda of hospitality, specifically at Crosswind Church, has been that we would be a church of home groups. Because nobody does well in isolation. And for the last few weeks, or honestly for the last month, there have been some of you who have scanned the QR code, you downloaded the app, and you filled out a home group inquiry. And it's taken me, I apologize, but it's taken me a minute to place you or to get your contact information out because we don't have enough groups. And the groups that we do have, they're already full. Because 10 families, 10 homes have said yes to hospitality. So what would it look like as we continue to practice hospitality? Could it be that we become a church of groups, a church of community, that it wasn't just about Sunday morning, it was about that and so much more? That's how you make a large church feel small. That's how you make a church with multiple services and multiple events and a lot of things going on feel intimate. When not everybody knows your name, but when a core group of 3 or 4 families do, and they know your kids' names, and they know your struggles, and they know how to pray for you. That's the potential of practicing hospitality. That's the potential of life change. You may not ever step into the starting point room and pray with me or another person on our staff, but I guarantee those of you who have experienced home groups, you've experienced someone else's hospitality, you have had your group leader or other members of your group pray for one another. And I'll just be honest with you, that's a lot more powerful than some random pastor, isn't it? Why? Because you've opened yourself up. You've said yes to hospitality. You've said yes to being a part of community. You've said yes to showing up with food or plates because you can't cook, whatever it is your deal is, right? Like, there's always a way to show up. And so here at the end of the series, I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can encourage you, we can teach you for 4 weeks, but really the challenge has been up to you. Invite someone over. Practice hospitality, because this isn't going away. It is our culture, it is our strategy to not just put you in rows, but also in circles. To put you in homes so that people know your name. I try to know all your names, but I fail at it. Instead of putting that pressure on me, what if we just decided together as a group of 300 to 400 Jesus followers, we were going to connect with one another. And we were going to learn each other's names. And we were going to show up help one another out, and invite others to be a part. That's hospitality. That's Christian hospitality. And as we've said for the last 4 weeks, it's definitely a lot more than a meal. Let me pray for you this morning. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much that you loved us. You sent your Son to live, to die, as we read this morning, to be resurrected for our sake and sins. But thank God that the very first followers of you didn't stay within the walls of Jerusalem, that you commanded them to go forth into Jerusalem, into Judea, and to all of the world. And Lord, now it's our turn. May the things that we talk about, the things that we discuss here on a Sunday morning, don't just stay in this big metal building. They don't just stay on a YouTube video or on a podcast, but we would take the Word of God. We would take the applications of your Word into our workplaces, into our school spaces, into the relationships that we have, to prove to others life with you is better. So God, as we move forward into the rest of 2020, 26 and beyond, God, help us, give us an opportunity, show us how we can all practice hospitality. May we not focus on being on a stage. May we focus on doing what we can do at the age we're at the place of life we're at, so that we can use hospitality as a way to change somebody's world. And through it all, God, I pray that you would get the glory, and you would get the glory alone. It's in your holy and precious name I pray. And everybody at Crosswind Church said, amen. Y'all have a great week.